I made a mistake, I was wrong, and I want to own up to that. Ahoy, my name is ZiSotto, and today we're talking about Gilgamesh. And as a little bonus in the background we have some Gilgamesh support footage with animosity, which I know some of you guys wanted to see. Not too long ago, Gilgamesh got nerfs when he came from PTS, and at the time I thought that those nerfs were too much. And I take pride in my god assessments usually being pretty good and pretty spot on when it comes to new god releases for basically the entirety of last year, but with Gilgamesh I was definitely off. Ironically, ultimately the assessment that I made about Gilgamesh prior to the nerfs, assuming the nerfs wouldn't happen, is more accurate for his current state than what I thought would happen after the nerfs. As a reminder, the main nerf that I thought was too much was the damage reduction, base damage to dropkick. The Sunforged SMITE nerf I was completely okay with, and I think the actual in-game impact outside of solo lane isn't all that big anyways. So how wrong was I really, and how wrong are some other people in the current assessment of Gilgamesh as well? Let's begin with the conquest stats. The downside to these stats is that mirror matches are included here as far as I'm aware, so these stats could shift a little bit further in ranked. If we look at conquest specifically, then Gilgamesh has a win rate of 52.49%. That doesn't sound insanely high, but you have to keep in mind that this is the 16th highest win rate in the game at the moment. The highest win rate gods are gods like Arachne and Anubis with 53.7% or 53.8%, so really there isn't that much of a difference, and if Gilgamesh didn't have so many mirror matches in there, he might be much closer to that. What's also interesting is that those are just the stats for more experienced players. For new players, he is the 4th best god in the game right now. I think this in itself is fairly telling already. Gilgamesh's base kit is easy enough to pick up, and on very new levels of play, or very low levels of play, people don't really know how to counter things. And especially due to his one, Gilgamesh is pretty good at holding down left mouse button and running at people for a long time. At the same time, we also have to keep in mind that currently not a lot of people are specifically counter-picking Gilgamesh. So if we were to go into ranked right now, we might just see a draft build against him, and there are some gods that work very, very well against him. I will make a whole counter guide in the near future. So when he specifically counterpicked, that should influence his win rate a lot as well, which we simply can't because it's casual conquest or casual game modes in general so far. I think that was also part of the disparity in my own experience on PTS and in the experience on the live client, being that a lot of people tried various counterpicks for Gilgamesh to try and see how they performed, and obviously they performed quite well. In addition to that, my assessment was also off because of the ping. Gilgamesh feels a lot more fluid on low ping. I think it makes a massive difference for using his kit effectively, so that definitely influenced my perception as well. But what is the big problem that I'm talking about? We're not done by just looking at conquest. If we look at arena, we'll actually see a very, very similar result in terms of performance. It's a difference of 0.1% at the moment. If we look at clash, we'll also see 52.89%, so really around the same realms. And that all kind of makes sense, it goes together. In arena he can affect an entire enemy team with his ultimate, which is a big bonus for him, but at the same time there are significantly less walls to kick enemies into, and that obviously hinders his performance in some regard, so I think that kind of balances out. In Clash you also have some relatively wide lanes, some open spaces around the siege juggernaut, and those type of things that kind of make it so that you can utilize your ult well in some situations, not so well in others, and that there are places where you can kick enemies into walls very easily, and other places where it's similar to Conquest or even harder. But those are not the only maps. In Assault, his current win rate is 57.67%. Now balance in Assault is always a fickle beast, and some gods here have significantly higher win rates than others, but it's most certainly not a fun map to play against him on. The lane is barely wide enough to avoid his ultimate, and it's very easy to kick you into a wall at pretty much any place on the map. In Joust he has almost 55% win rate, putting him in the 10th spot, mostly behind some healers and big AoE circle guards. But again, a map layout that is just perfect for him. So many walls, such narrow passages where you always find a place to kick enemies into the wall, and where you can make very good use of your ultimate. A well-placed dropkick can also have a drastic impact in a team fight, taking out 2 out of 3 of the enemies instead of having the rest of the team fight you still. And in Siege he has the 4th highest win rate, also around 55%. I can't 100% explain this one because I feel like the layout is much more similar to Clash, but maybe that has something to do with there being a more contested point in the middle where you can easily set up for your teammates. I'm not entirely sure. But what is very clear from this is that a lot of people will have the perception that Gilgamesh is very, very strong, especially if they don't primarily play Conquest. And even in Conquest, the current impression seems to go in the direction of him being relatively strong. And what that could lead to is people being very frustrated if he doesn't get nerfs or if the nerfs go not far enough according to their expectations based on the game modes they're playing. Now, Hi-Rez doesn't balance based on other game modes, but it's unusual to have a guard perform so well across the field and stand out so much in some of the modes at the same time. I also think we're still very, very far from seeing his true potential. We're at the point where people still forget to pick up free items because they're not used to them spawning randomly on the map, and that's completely understandable, but at that point we can't really expect people to fully have learned a guard yet. And I know from playing myself that even now, knowing how to play him better, as I discussed in my guide, I still struggle sometimes with the right timings on his abilities, the right order, the right placement. The muscle memory is just not there yet, and I think that is something that can significantly change how well you can perform on a character in the long run, especially when his combo potential is as high as Gilgamesh. What we have yet to see, and will only find out once he's in ranked, is how his performance across different levels of play is. I would suspect that there would be a significant difference between them, because on one hand you have the guards that counter his kit, but also the guards that just are very good at locking him down, and he is a guard without CC immunity, so that is something that can cause him a lot of trouble, or guards that can abuse the fact that he doesn't really get extra defenses. It is safe to assume that casual modes have more new players than ranked modes, which might be able to bring his overall win rate down again, because as we said at the start, his highest win rate is against new players. When it comes to balancing him and changing him, there's another big problem. What point do you tackle? Gilgamesh is a peak hybrid character. He's got strong basic attack damage, or strong basic attack steroid, he's got strong ability damage, and he's got strong single target damage as well as strong AoE damage. He also has various kinds of good CC, and he has got team-wide buffs. And finding out which one's the one that will actually impact him significantly on the right level of play is a very, very complicated task. Once there is more clarity regarding his performance on different levels of play, and there are some statistics about his items on those different levels of play, it'll be a little bit clearer, but I'm not even sure if Hi-Rez will change him before he goes into ranked, because they might just not be able to find out these stats, even though they probably have better internal data than we have access to. So the epic of Gilgamesh and SMITE is going to be quite an interesting journey, and I'd like to see where it goes in the long run. Again, in the next days we're talking about countering Gilgamesh, so if you're struggling with him, then click like and subscribe, or I will go to my garage, hide in the corner, stare at. Thanks to my patrons for making this video possible. That includes That Nick Walker, Donald Dryden, Melancholy Ganger, Dwayne Brennan, Lenter25 Green, Zed the Undead, and Nevitz Jr., Rawas, and everyone else you see here.